There are a list of virtues that teachers believe must be cultivated in children. For example, being honest, polite, respectful. If a child is doing the opposite, which is not desirable, why shouldn't we think about what's wrong with the child first, although the teacher's reaction is related to his or her past?
Because the child doesn't exist as a separate entity floating in an empty universe. That's why. If you're struggling with a child who's being very dishonest, where did the child, it's such a disservice to the child not to ask the question, even to myself, how did this child learn to be so dishonest? Not only in my classroom, but this child has other environments. How did this child become so frightened of telling the truth? What is the threat that this child has been under? Because like you, I would love to see this child become more honest. And I can't remember, I'm sorry. Karen, perhaps you can remind me, what are the other attributes? Honesty and?
Polite, respectful.
And polite and respectful. Those attributes are learned through the relationships that dominate in that child's life. It's not about the child. No human being was ever born disrespectful. Our genetics is important, but it doesn't work that way. Those are learned behaviors. When children attack, are rude, when they've learned to not trust their adults, how dare we not ask the question, what has happened to this child? I know that his behavior or her behavior is very unpleasant. Of course, I want this child to grow up in those areas of respect and politeness. But what happened? What happened to this child? What is the hurt that this child is reacting to be so defensive? If we don't do that, what we're doing is impolite to the child, because we're blaming. Making the child the problem is actually doing violence to the child. So, and I'd acknowledge the difficulty when I'm with a child who's impolite. I don't like that, and I have some demands to make. I do say, I don't like how you're talking to me, so I want you to stop. I will be annoyed if I'm being mistreated. However, to understand the child who's dishonest and impolite, rude, etc., if I'm to bring some healing to their life, first place to begin is to remember that I'm not a hero. When have I been impolite? When was I dishonest and impolite? Sometime in my life, especially as a child. I need to go to that place and then to ask, what was going on for me inside? Why was I hiding that way? Why was I distrustful of the adults in my life? Why was I pushing them away? What was going on in my heart that made me behave so badly? If I understand that, and then I ask, this hurt that I was carrying, what did I need so that I could be loving again? This will give me some clues about the impolite child that sits in front of me. I want to say this, and this is worth writing down, I think. Children's behavior is a reflection of their environments. Not just the classroom, there's also the family, the home. Every child that sits in front of you brings so many stories that you cannot possibly discover in the time that you have. The behavior is a reflection of those stories. This is the statement that I want to make. Behavior is biography. And it's not exactly that we behave exactly the way we've been treated. Sometimes that's the case, but mainly it's that our behavior, particularly our toxic behaviors, are adaptations in one way or another to something painful that happened to us. Until that pain is addressed, just fiddling with the behavior, it won't make a difference. Not a sustained difference. We do need to teach, and here's the other thing, role modeling. If we want our children to be polite and honest and respectful, not if, we do, don't we? We all want that. Our first responsibility is to be role modeling that. How can I be respectful to the dignity of this child? Even if at the moment I don't like this child. How can I be honest in front of this child? Role modeling, role modeling, role modeling, role modeling, and we need to be, I think it's up to us as adults. We're the leaders of this, so we need to be very committed to role modeling the behaviors that we would like our children to demonstrate. I think you can see I've said many things, that it's not one tool for helping our children to grow into loving, respectful beings, but there's a series of tools. Role modeling, listening and understanding the child's pain, explaining very clearly the behavior that we want, but self-disclosure, letting them know our heart. If you're being rude to me and that affects me in some way, it'll help if I say, that hurts when you talk that way to me. I need you to stop. So all of those things come together, and one important tool is reflecting on our own childhood history. It tells us, it brings big insights and ahas about what that child in front of us needs. Thank you.
有時候我從學生嘅表現察覺到好多問題其實來自家長，佢哋對學生好負面，我係感到好無力，因為喺學校只係得我一個人嘅力量，能夠分俾每一個學生嘅時間已經好少，而佢哋返到屋企之後，仲要面對父母嘅管教同埋批評，我覺得好無奈。我覺得我能夠做嘅真係只係有好少。我可以點樣去照顧自己呢種無奈呢？
Thank you for your question. Let's take care of that sense of helplessness right now. I believe that one of the most agonizing things for teachers, and when I think about this, it makes me deeply, deeply sad that you won't get to see the ripples that you make and how far goes your voice and your influence. You will only get to see a small fraction of that. You won't meet, unless you're very lucky, you will rarely meet the person that your students become when they turn 30, 40, 50, and 60. I meet those people. They come to me at 40, 50, 60 years of age, and they tell me the stories that, they might say, I remember when I was 9 years old, and the only person that said something nice to me was my teacher, and I never thanked her. And she never knew that the impact that she had on me. She will never know. I don't know where she is, but I remember her in my heart at 40 or 50, 60 years of age. Her voice makes a difference to me today, decades later. When I feel bad about myself, I remember what the teacher showed me. She liked me. And she doesn't know how much she has meant to me and the power that she gave me to believe in myself through those interactions. So the first thing I want to say to you, you're 1,000,000 times less helpless than how you feel. Please know that. Because 1 second of a loving interaction with a child stays inside that child's body for the rest of their life, even though, sadly, you won't necessarily see the effects that you have had. Certainly not not necessarily in the immediate future. It's nice when you do, but often you won't. Especially when you're working with a child who goes back every day to a violent or very neglectful, very chaotic environment at home that you are powerless to fix. Please know that as a witness to that child's difficulty, the difference that you make is enormous. If you have 5 minutes with that child, even though the other scary adults have that child for the rest of the day, those 5 minutes can stay with that child for life and make a huge difference. You will be remembered. I'll be as quick as possible in telling you a very amazing social experiment that was done in Sydney by 3 psychologists who they wanted to understand the power of listening to children, listening to their emotions and not telling them what's wrong, not telling them to cheer up. They deliberately picked the hardest early childhood center in the entire city of Sydney. Big city, nearly 5 million people. This little preschool, almost all of the children went home to parents that were alcoholic or abusing drugs, broken families, a lot of violence, unemployed. And the behavior you can imagine in the school was terrible. Kids hitting each other and screaming and acting out and not focusing, not concentrating. And the staff turnover rate was abominable. Some staff would work there for 2 weeks and be unable to keep going, and they would leave after 2 weeks. They picked that school. Every day they were recording behavioral incidents in a logbook, and it was an enormous logbook, this thick, because kids were acting out. They trained the teachers in how to be a very solid, interested listener of the children, no matter what the child brings you. If the child comes to you and says, "Today I hate you," then you say, "Really? Tell me why you hate me." This doesn't mean accepting abuse, but they're not behavior, but emotions. If a child says, "I love this," "Oh, interesting, tell me more about that." Or if a child says, "I'm sad," well, you're allowed to be sad. Tell me why you're sad. If a child says, "I'm terrified," well, "Oh, tell me about your terror. What help would you like from us?" Not to push children out of their emotions, to let them be validated. And now it's hard to learn that skill. It's so simple, but it's confronting and it's hard. We usually just want to change things and be happy and, cheer up, and it's wrong to feel angry, and there's all these interventions that we want to make because that's what was done to us. That's how we repeat the history. We were blocked, so we start automatically blocking the kids. So these 3 psychologists, this is a little bit like a fairy tale, isn't it? The 3 psychologists. The 3 psychologists promised the teachers, "Look, what we want you to offer the children, we will offer you. Twice a week we come to visit. Each teacher takes a turn to speak in private, complete confidentiality assured, and you can tell us whatever is in your heart. If you're having a bad day, you can say in any way that you want to say it. You can cry, you can shout, you can say horrible things, you can laugh, whatever is in your heart, we will listen, and we won't try to fix you or change you." And so it was passed from the psychologists to the teachers to the children. And they weren't sure what would happen. And just like you asked in your question, every day these kids will go back, no matter what you do, to a very dangerous environment, a very traumatic environment. How can we make a difference? Well, you can. You do. You already have. Believe me, you already have, even if it's not shown to you. Here's what happened. They were almost shocked at what a big difference was made in their two objective measures. One, the behavioral incidence log started to go down and down and down, and it was plummeting, less and less, quite quickly. The other thing that changed was the staff turnover rate. The cultural environment of the school, of the preschool, was changed so powerfully that the teachers weren't broken by the environment anymore. They found kids that were starting to respond to them. And it's too easy just to try to ask teachers to do that. But you get better at it when you include remembering what it was like to be a child and what you needed. And that is, it's so motivating. How much you needed to be heard and validated. You wanted interpersonal boundaries to be shown to you, how to behave so that you don't hurt other people, so that you don't disrespect other people, how to care for others. You wanted to learn that, strong guidance, but you also wanted all of your wild emotions to be understood, validated and heard. What happens when a child or an adult is heard and validated? We start to settle, to calm, our hearts open. We're not so angry or terrified or ashamed anymore. So you can see those children then grew up and went to primary school and high school, and we don't know where they are. But straight away, there was a measurable difference through the act of deep listening. Deep listening. And the teachers are busy, they can't always do that. But if it's maybe in the playground, or it reduces how busy you are, because when every child in your class feels that you really hear them and you really validate it and acknowledge them, it reduces the difficult behaviors that you will have to deal with and face. They all come into harmony. So you're not working so hard anymore. You're given more time. The classroom in which the kids, if a lot of the kids, a third of the kids, whatever, are feeling like they're alone and alien, and their pain, nobody's interested in their pain, that's when you get such toxic behavior in the room that you're made twice as busy as you should be, and your day becomes so difficult. So I think that the reflective exercises such as these, not just listening to the kids, but listening to ourselves, it reduces the load. It doesn't add something. It deeply reduces the load on the teacher, and your impact will go so far, way beyond what you can imagine. Thank you for your question.